Hi, class. What I thought I would do is go over some of the environments that have been created for my other classes so you kind of have a gauge of what the quality that can be produced in this class. Okay, so I'm just going to, got a Photoshop file here with just a bunch of the environments on it, and I'm just going to kind of take you through it. Okay, so here's one. It's a typical kind of a interior environment, okay, that is quite popular. It's a lot of companies that need people to be able to produce interiors like this. One of the things that a lot of times you want to be able to do is go ahead and put a photograph on the outside, so it seems like, you know, that there's actually something going on the outside, and this is a pretty decent piece, okay? Now, I'm going to show you a variety of different looks. Students approach this a variety of different ways, okay? So that was a real clean environment. Here's one where the student has come in and wanted more of a dilapidated kind of environment, okay? So a lot of books, and it's old and torn down. And I usually like for my students to render a couple of different views, okay? So like that's one view, and then here's another angle shooting back across, okay? So these are kind of nice, okay? There's issues with them, like this bump on the ground looks a little odd. There's some odd things about them, but overall these look pretty good. They're in the realm of being close to being portfolio pieces. And so that's one of the things you have to kind of determine in this class. Are you just taking the class just so that you can, you know, make the grade and kind of learn a little bit of information? Or are you trying to really, you know, push yourself? And that's what it takes to get in this industry. Okay, here's another one. Okay, it's kind of like that first one. It's a nice interior. Okay, now, a lot of the models in here are pre-made, which is, you know, that's a very common thing that you do in interior work. Okay, we build the structures and we light it and texture it, but a lot of the objects are just pre-made objects in here, which is fine. That's one shot of this. Here's another shot of the same room. Okay, so by doing 2 or 3 cameras angles, then you can get a better three-dimensional understanding of what's going on in here. There's issues with this. Like you can see through the bottom of the door here where they didn't make the door match at the bottom. That's a problem. I can see a little light coming through right there. So there are some issues with some of these, but overall these are pretty good pieces. Here's another one, predominantly kind of a red theme. You have to watch with the red because you can get a lot of saturation in here. Overall, this looks pretty good. They got some titleable things that's going on where they're using some titleable textures. Here's another shot of the same room, okay? Lighting's a huge factor in environments setting a specific type of mood, so you have to, you know, use your lights correctly and the right kind of lights. All of these renders are done in either Maya or Max, and they're using mental rays with, in Max, that'd be Arch and Design shaders, and in Maya, that'll be Mia shaders. And then they're all using photometric lights, okay? Here's another one, which is kind of a lobby at a hotel. And so what they're doing is they've got a daylight system because there's a glass wall on the left-hand side. So they put a daylight system outside that's leaking the initial lighting in here and then putting some, you know, additional lights in here. You know, here's another one. Now, this is a more kind of plain. I don't think it's completely finished, but it's a pretty decent, you know. We don't want this black over here. I would put something on the ground. We need something back in here. Need things like baseboards, but, you know, it's a good start to something that could turn into a portfolio pieces. Other ones that people do are pretty darn, you know, pretty close to being portfolio pieces. This is a nice bathroom, kind of a lot of kind of a modern kind of bathroom, okay? Getting the lighting right and the textures and everything right. He used a particle system for the grass. That worked out pretty well. Okay, here's more of a little creative one. This student wanted to do a kind of Frankenstein laboratory, and so they built this laboratory with a lot of, you know, glass objects in here. They would be like, you know, they used some old Hammer movies, black and white movies as their reference. Here's another render from another angle. Got some DOF things out of focus, then going back to focus in there where the Frankenstein monster would be up there. So this is a nice kind of piece, okay? So you can be as creative as you want with these, okay? The main thing is that you're, you know, to me, is that you're, you know, wanting to produce something that could be in your portfolio so that you're learning and creating portfolio stuff at the same time. The student wanted to create a game room. And so he did, you know, he's got his game console down here is TV. A lot of things on the, like comic books, kind of the person, I guess this is a young man's room, with comic books. And then, they've actually highlighted their games and stuff over here, which is kind of funny, I think. But now it's kind of some cool lighting in here. Of course, got posters. So it's a nice environment. This one is on the opposite end. This is one of my students wanted a more kind of lighthearted kind of an environment. So she came up with this particular environment, which turned out pretty well. Okay, this student actually did something that's pretty cool. Is he actually did the environment twice. He did it once like they were moving in. Okay, so they just got the boxes in and they're starting to move things in. And then he came back and then set it up once they had moved in, what they had everything set up. Okay, so that was kind of a nice change to actually stage it two different ways, using a daylight system coming in and bouncing around. It's a very nice piece. So here's one that's another interior, and it's pretty nice, other than they didn't take the time to actually get us a photograph outside so that it completes it. And you can see this kind of looks a little, weird just having blue out there. So I'd encourage you, you want to composite, some imagery coming in through there. Okay. Now here's another nice environment. It's a very dark environment. It's got some mental ray artifacts going on up here, and that's easily fixed, but he didn't get it fixed. I think he's got shag carpet. I think it's a little long and there's not enough particles in here. So it looks really kind of sparse. But overall, this is a pretty nice piece, and did a pretty good job lighting it. Okay, a young person's room. Okay, looks pretty good. It's pretty nice. The lighting in here is a little odd, though. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of light coming in here from somewhere, like there's a wall missing or something in here, which is a very typical thing I see people do. Use a daylight system, and then they don't build the entire room, and so the daylight system looks like you have knocked down a couple of walls and the sun shining through. He's got some faceting on some of the stuff in here. I don't know if he didn't weld it all together and smooth it, but there's some weird artifacts. But overall, it's pretty nice piece, and could be wouldn't take much to bring it in to be a portfolio piece. Another interior. Some nice reflections on the ground. A lot of times people get too much reflections. I think this door's got too much reflection on it. You have to kind of, choose and pick where you're going to make things shiny and where things are going to be matte that works to create a nice composition. Here's one which is like a dorm room. Okay. And was done pretty well. I still, should have composited, an image on the outside here to kind of complete this. This door is way too glossy. Can you see how it's reflecting this light, this window into the door? Like this door is like a mirror. So you have to watch your materials. And a lot of times you don't really want to use black. It just ends up being a hole in things. I mean, when you want something to be black, you use about a 90% gray, and then that'll come off black, but then you can get some shadowing in with it. Okay. But, it's odd things about it, like this chair's positioning in relationship to this is like perfectly aligned. We want to do what I call designed chaos, where it looks like, there's actually somebody that's been living in the room. Here's one where a student kind of want to do a Hobbit kind of room, and it worked out pretty good. You got some DOF in it. Overall, it worked out pretty well. This was a very interesting one because the student wanted to do a set, like a movie set. So he found some photos of an actual set, and then he built it and he lit it like it was an actual set. And so it ended up turning out pretty nice. Okay, here's a futuristic scene. So the student went out and found some concept art of a futuristic scene, and then he built it. Now, the thing is that what you have to realize is you're going into a world in which that you won't be designing the rooms, okay? You either, the people work together in teams, and you have a concept artist, and then you have a modeler, okay? The concept artist comes up with the concepts, the modelers model the models based on those concepts. You don't really have situations where somebody comes in and they do the concept and they do the modeling and they do the whole thing. It just doesn't work that way. So this was a concept art that he found. He presented a lot of them to me, and this one I approved. And then he did 3 different views and Did a good job of texturing it and lighting it. Here's the third view. Very nice piece. These are kind of what you guys need to shoot for. Okay. Now, here's one, kind of an old rustic kind of hotel is what it was. And I think he ended up not building some of the other walls. And so it ends up looking like maybe a den or something, but it's actually a hotel. But he's going for the whole, really rustic and, peeled paper kind of look. Got some kind of weird artifacts, a lot of people don't understand. You can't just take any texture and plop it onto something. You got to make sure the texture is tileable if you're going to use it in a tileable way. And of course, I've got a video up in my YouTube channel on how to make tileable textures, and you can watch that to kind of understand how to do that. Another shot of it. I kind of have a tendency to get you to stay away from doing these, funky, 30 feet up in the sky shooting down on things. Normally an environment, what you want to act like is that you're like just a person that walked in and you're looking in the environment. So when you start, shooting like you're way up in here, then it doesn't look natural. Okay. The other thing that's, it's really cheesy, but I see students all the time, they see a fireplace. Oh my gosh. As soon as they see a fireplace, it's like, oh, let's put a light in the fireplace. That'll be really original. It's like, no, it's not original. Matter of fact, I get 10 of them a quarter, we're not doing special effects, and you wouldn't have put a light in here unless we actually did special effects and had flames and stuff in here and had it burning. Then we could put a light in there and do that. But otherwise, you just wouldn't do that. Okay. It's just kind of cheesy. Okay. This student wanted to do a big, library. Okay. And did a pretty decent job in building it. She struggled with it forever, but did a pretty good job. There's issues like the wood that's on the ground. The scale is of it's not correct. And the lighting in it is not very good because the only light that should be coming from this environment is this lamp and this lamp. And based on physics, there's no way that these lamps would actually light the top of it up there. So one of the things I do sometimes is take the students' work and I kind of rework it a little bit to kind of show them. So I did that on this. This has also got a lot of orange leakage in its rendering. So I color corrected it and then I adjusted the lights. And so the lights seem like they're coming from these lamps that are lighting the room instead of just light coming from everywhere. A lot of times students don't understand that light has to come from somewhere. Light just doesn't appear. We just don't place random lights and throw a bunch of lights in here because then it looks like it's awkward and we do a bunch of lights in here. Light comes from somewhere. And in this particular situation, this environment, the lights only come from this and that. And so they would fall off into darkness. Plus that creates much better mood when your light is not evenly lit. You really don't want things evenly lit. Okay, this is one the student did pretty nice. I thought he did a pretty good job. I just think it could have been a lot better if you'd had more than one light source in here. Okay, and so I went in and kind of reworked it, relit it, and this is what mine looks like. Okay, so you'll see I put another light source up here because basically the way this was designed is this was in the basement, and then you went upstairs and there was a room up here with glass walls, and so you would have light leaking in from up there. Okay. He also did a weird thing over here where he was this was like a science fiction floor bitmap with a normal map with it, but then he stretched it, okay, which looks pretty odd. And so I came back in and reset it up, and it looks like there's more like some kind of mechanical detail and stuff in here. Okay. Also, I came in and laid in the TV. I rotated. He had a TV in here, but I rotated it so it pointed it to us a little bit more, and then put a piece of art on there. And then I put some lights in here and used the art projecting from the light to get some interaction that's going in here. Another thing I did is, he's got some harsh shadowing in here. It's just kind of odd, and there's not much detail. These are supposed to be separate panels, and you can see there's a little line in between them, but everything would have a manufactured edge. So we would catch highlights on those. And so you'll see that when I relit it, you'll have little highlights. See that highlight along the edge of the bottom of that shelf. Okay. This is where I'm using Max's, or Mental Ray's rounded shader. Maya's got it. It's a Mental Ray thing, which allows you to get manufactured edges on things without having to actually model those in. Look at the difference in this table, and you can see, it's kind of okay, but then when I get it in here, it's got a nice mood where you get some reflections and stuff in it. So Overall, this one just has, a much better overall mood set for it. Here's one that was really kind of nice, kind of a rustic attic. And there were a few things wrong with this, but the main thing, I didn't like the photo that they got. First of all, there's a line right down the middle of the photo. But the other thing about it is you've got this hot light coming in here, but then they've gotten a photo which feels like we're in the woods and there's no light coming through. So I wanted, I came back in and put a different image in there, one that it seemed like light was coming through. And so it just made it solidified it that it was actually what was generating the light. And you can see I backed off of the amount of light that was hitting the edges of this. Okay, backed off that a little bit. And just kind of solidified the image a little bit. Okay, now this particular one right here, if you're really interested in this, I did a detailed video on my YouTube channel exactly how I did this. Now, it was an interesting conversation with this student because I kept trying to tell him the room was too barren and put more stuff in it, but he kept coming back and says, well, it's going to take too long to render if I do that. Well, that's really not the case. I mean, yes, if I have, a scene that's got, 50,000 polygons on it, and then I put 20 million polygons, then yeah, it's going to change the render times, but just adding a few things in here is not going to alter your render time very much. The other thing that was kind of odd about, there's a lot of things odd about this, like this headphones over here, you can see that it's kind of floating, in which that the part that goes over your head, it should be laying down, but it's not. He downloaded this table, which had a book rack on it, and he left it on there, and it's like, well, dude, if you're gonna put a book rack, put some books in here, okay? Otherwise, get rid of the book rack, okay? But the weirdest thing in here to me was just, it looks like somebody came in with knocked a wall down and pulled a car in here, and their headlights are shining at this. There's no natural lighting in there. There's not much mood in here. So I went back and reworked this extensively, and when I got finished with it, mine looked like this. Okay, pretty drastic difference between them. Now what the student had done was pretty nice, but they just didn't push it where they needed to. As an example, I told him, he would be better getting rid of the leather chair. If he put something with a pattern on it, would add this, because you got to remember, this is just an illustration when you get finished with it. Of course, his comment to me was, well, I'm into leather. It's like, well, I don't care if you're into leather. I'm not asking you to buy it. I'm talking about making a piece of artwork. Okay, so I chose a cloth chair with a nice pattern on it. Now, I'm doing a lot of things in here. I've relit it, okay, which is funny because he had 3 lights in his, and his took an hour to render, and I ended up putting about 16 or 17 lights in mine, and mine took about 15 minutes to render. It's just you have to know what you're doing. And I added a lot more stuff in here, books, and, a poster on the wall, and there's a lot of conceptual things I put in here. This was a music studio, so I went and created actual books that I got off of Amazon that were on music recording. And then when I did this, Mad Max, the newest Mad Max was out, and they had a really cool vehicle in there with all speakers and stuff. So I thought that'd be a cool poster to put in here. And I put some other hints in here. There's a lot of concept that I try to put into my pieces, but you need, go over and watch that video that I did on this, and it explains all of it, shows you, how I did it. Okay. Okay, this is the last one I want to show you. This student wanted to do kind of a high school science lab, and did a pretty good job. Okay, I thought it needed a lot of work, but overall it's pretty good. I would have put like I said, I had to put some kind of an image out here. I didn't really like these chips in here. I mean, it could have some chips, but it don't seem correct to me. Thought it was kind of barren. You got all these bookshelves, but there's not much in there. But overall it's pretty good. So I come back, and initially I've worked on it twice. My initial work is I relit it and I put a photo out here. I kind of streamlined a little bit, took some of the things out of it just a little bit, because it was getting a little muddy in these areas. Like, okay, what is all this stuff? Okay, so you kind of have to pay attention to that. So this was my initial stab at it. Okay, and then once I got it and I relit it, and it was looking pretty good, then I came back and did a final pass on it, and my final one looks like this. So that's his, and this is mine. And I haven't done a video on this one yet. I've got it all lined up to do it, so I'll probably be doing it pretty soon. But this one's got a lot of concept in it. So what I came back in, and it's like, okay, it's a high school science lab. So I did the whole concept of Walter White from Breaking Bad, who was a high school science teacher. So you'll see over here on the left, I got a couple of monitors, and there's, Walter White with Jesse behind him. And then on the other monitor, it was all about them making crystal meth, a blue crystal meth. So I've got a crystal, meth in there. But there's other subtle hints of things in here. You can see I put a lot more books in here. I mean, drastically different what this up in here looks like. And I made this, he wanted this kind of crackle glass, which I liked. And so I punched it up. His was pretty opaque. Got it so it looked correct. But I threw some other things in here, like, and you kind of have to look at them. You might not notice any of these at first, but once you know them, it was kind of cool. One of the things, Walter White, he was part owner at one time in a company called Gray Matter. And so what I've got here is I've put a jar in here that's got a gray brain in it. Okay, it's very subtle. Okay. But I also focused on, here's the blue liquid, to make the crystal from. Okay. Another thing that was kind of the music and stuff they used in the movie, the series was pretty cool. And so they had this one, it's about late 60s, early 70s, Tommy James and the Shondells, Crystal Blue Persuasion, which is a song they played, which merely matched this. So when I went out and found an actual reference of the 45 cover that you could have bought the record, I've got it sitting right over here. But there's some other things I threw in here as well. Like the turning point in the series was when Walter White's brother-in-law finds a Walt Whitman book. And so I've got a copy right here. This is the actual copy of the Walt Whitman book, so it's in there. Another aspect then the series, which was came in several of the episodes where they had made, Walter White had made some ricin, which is kind of poison, and he hid it in a wall plate. And so I've got these two wall plates I put in here. They weren't in the original one. There weren't any wall plates in here, but I put them in there, electrical outlets. And then this one is cocked because that's where he hid it. He always hid it inside of there. So subtle thing. And then just as I was finishing this up, I added one more thing because they did 5 seasons and Walter White supposedly died in the last one, though they didn't really show him dying, but they kind of gave you the impression he died. But then they just had announced, when I was working on this, just announced that they were going to come back with a 6th season. So I came up here and changed the clock to be 6 o'clock. You'll see it's about, it's different here. And I changed it to 6 o'clock to kind of indicate the 6th season that we're going to come up with. So, it takes a while, and this was rendered out in passes. Like I have 3 different groups of kind of lights in here, and how I kind of, composite it all together. You'll see all these little highlights on the glass in here. Matter of fact, you can see it drastically here. Look at this glass on theirs and then mine, and see how they pop. That's because I did some light linking where I threw some Omni lights in here that only could cast highlights on the glass. And then it was able to punch that glass to look a little bit better in there. And then I did 2 or 3 of those passes for different areas in here. Anyway, so that hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of possibilities of things you can do. I know a lot of students, when they, come to the class, they're all into themselves and want to, they do their designs and build their stuff. And that's fine. That will never happen in the industry. In the industry, you're not going to come up with the designs, and you're not going to do the modeling and the lighting and the texturing and all that. You'll have a specific job. You could be a conceptual artist. I doubt it, but you could be. That's such a small part of the industry, and you have to be such high level to get those kinds of jobs. And really, there aren't any jobs. It's all freelance if you're doing concept art. Very few jobs in doing that. But anyway, this gives you an idea of what you could shoot for if you're trying to do portfolio work. Now, like I said, maybe you're just taking the class and you just want to kind of learn some of the information. You just want to get your grade. And so you're not going to push yourself to build these portfolio quality pieces. But if you are truly wanting to work in the industry at any given time, when you're doing your projects, you need to think about, am I generating, portfolio quality work? Because in the end, you're going to have a portfolio because that's what gets you the job, or at least it gets you the, portfolio gets you in the door where they would think about hiring you. It won't actually land you the job, but it'll get you in the ballpark. Okay. All right. So hopefully that helps you out. All right. Thank you very much.